So weft and warp, this is a pretty important concept, and it's very useful inside Marvelous Designer. So basically, those two things, they are names for all the threading that is the clothing is made out of, and warp are those vertical threads, and weft is the horizontal one. When I first encountered those two options in Marvelous Design, I was kind of confusing those two, but then somebody told me how to remember those things better. And so the way I learned which one is which is by remembering that the name itself. So in this case, it's the weft, and weft and warp, they all have W as the first letter, but the second one is the one that I remembered. So weft has E, and E has those horizontal lines, which is exactly what weft is. It's those horizontal lines. So to me, this was really helpful. Every time I was trying to change the settings, I was going to this word, and I was remembering the letter E, and this way I knew that the weft was the horizontal lines and the warp was the vertical ones. Inside of Marvelous Designer, you can change the size of the weft or the warp by selecting one of your garments or all of the garments, and the settings are in the simulation properties to your right. You can see shrinkage weft, and then there's the shrinkage warp. So by default it's set to 100, which is percentage. And as you remember, weft is the horizontal size because of the E. So let's do some manipulations to illustrate how they work. So I will select the body, and let's say that I wanted to make it, well, I want it to be baggier, but I want the length to stay the same. So in that case, I would change the weft. I would put, let's say, 130 and see what happens. As you can see, it became kind of like a balloon, but the height, or I guess the vertical length, it stayed the same. It preserved its shape. So it's just the horizontal length that got changed because of the weft option. And I can do the same using the other one, which is warp. Put 130. It's not baggy, but it's now it's just hanging all the way down because the other length got changed. It's the vertical one. And so the reason why this option, this tool is great is it allows you to change your clothing, your garments, without actually scaling them up using this standard scaling option, which is here. And the reason why this method is I don't want to say it's not good. It's definitely the correct one. You want your garments to be as accurate to the real world as possible, because everything here in Marvelous is simulated using real world, well, physics and rules and all of that. So it's a good thing to match those things if you want your clothing to work properly. But there's a danger with using this scaling technique. In our case, it's no issue because it's a very simple, fairly simple piece of clothing. It's just a hoodie. But when you scale your garments using the standard scaling method, which is this, the garments, they extend. The sides got extended. This could be a problematic if the clothing was more complicated. And let's just simulate and see if something happens. But I'm pretty sure nothing will, because like I said, this is a fairly simple piece of clothing. Everything happened just normally, there's no problem. But imagine if this hoodie had layers on top of it. If there is I'm not talking about layers like some kind of stickers or patches or anything like that, but if there was if this is a more complicated piece of clothing, there could be a lot of layers on top. It could be some kind of patterns, that not just pieces of fabric stitched on top of this. This could be a very interesting and delicate kind of pattern. And like I said, there could be layers of clothing on top of layers. And so if you scale it using this option, every single element will have to do this kind of procedure, which is just extend itself, and then on top of that, everything has to be simulated. And so when you have so many layers and so many details, this could go wrong. Let's just say that. And one way to mitigate the damage is probably to just freeze some elements, simulate, then unfreeze those, freeze another ones, and so on and so forth. So it's a very tedious process. And what Weft and Warp does is allows you to kind of bypass this this procedure. So if I scale everything back.
If you enjoy this content or find it useful, please consider supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee via the link in the description.
The standard size, and if I changed both the Weft and the Warp settings, and if you pay attention to the 3D view, when I press simulate, the clothing just simulates out just immediately. There's no extension of the fabric outside of the seams. The seams stayed stitched. They preserve their shape. It's only the garment itself themselves that become bigger. And so this allows you to, even if it's a very complicated piece of clothing, this allows you to quickly change the size, because sometimes you might, well, you might have a different avatar and you want to quickly match the new proportions. And so instead of doing manipulations in here, you can always use Weft and the Warp very quickly, and it's with minimal damage. The thing to be mindful when you use Warp and Weft is that if you, for example, have your clothing and some pieces or just a few pieces, they have custom Weft and Warp settings, and you created a new piece, and you want this piece to be lying somewhere, doesn't matter, on top or below the clothing that you already have. So you want this piece to be sewn to one of the stitches. Make sure that this piece that you've created has the same Weft and Warp settings as the piece that you want it to be sewn to. And the thing about the settings, that they don't you don't see the change in 2D view. So for example, if you look at, let's just say this bottom segment, bottom line, it's 280.9 millimeters. And if I change this back to 100 and press enter, you can see nothing changed here. So just by looking at those numbers, you would not be able to tell whether something has warp or not. And if you were to match new piece to this one, this is no longer, because we changed the warp in here, for example, or let's say change the weft here, this is no longer 280.9, right? This has affected it drastically. So this one and this one, they're different length. So before you sew those things together, just make sure that you have the same settings everywhere. And the easy way to check it is if you select your garments, you can see that the weft and warp, they're now in red, which means that one of those, well, it means that those parameters, they don't match. Each element, each garment has its unique settings set in here. As for other ways to use the settings, they can be applied to either create smaller, finer wrinkles and details, or they can be applied to create new shapes altogether. So I will try to illustrate both in this case. I will begin by making a layer clone. And I will try to mimic the sleeves as a, well, I will give them this winter jacket, puffy look. So I'll select the sleeves. And in here I will set it to, let's say, 115, both the weft and the warp. And let's see what happens. This is a fairly soft material that I'm using, so let's add some pressure so we can see this effect a little bit better. And well, you can see what it does, but it's just it's no longer necessarily a winter jacket, but it's something that could be almost post-apocalyptic, worn out, thick material. It's definitely an interesting look. But the other effect that I want to show is something that I use very often on things like leather and denim. So what I would do is I would select those top layers, and instead of adding those big numbers, I would add instead something subtle. In this case, I would go with 103 and see what it does. As you can see, it's a very subtle change. It's barely noticeable, but it's if I hide this and then I bring it back, there's some additional wrinkles that appeared, and the thing about them is that they appear next to the seams, or pretty much they appear from the seams. There's just nice humps and dents and wrinkles and folds. In this case, it's a little bit, it's fake. You can see that there's a layer underneath, but there are a few elements that are nice, and if you use just the manipulation tool, you can definitely get those wrinkles in a good position, and there are a few of them gathered here. It's a very subtle effect. It's not something to create a new material. It's not something to create a new look, but it's something that to give you a nice base for additional sculpting or additional manipulation in something like ZBrush. And if you do want it to be more realistic than this, then proper stitching should be done before this manipulation. So, for example, by creating another line to simulate an effect of a stitch. And if we change the settings of the folding, this will add this extra layer of believability.